reason I'm using this is because we're going to videotape this. We got a lot of requests from parents saying they couldn't make it. Was there any way that we could videotape it? And then we're going to post it on our webpage. So I do have a big mouth, and I could really, but Gina is making me do this. So I have a wonderful leadership team, and I really want to thank Valerie Anir. She's the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, so she's here. And also Gina Flanagan. She's the principal of the high school, and she's videotaping for us tonight. And also the co-presenters. We've got Holly Martin, a wonderful assistant principal here. And we have Eileen Driscoll, and many of you have heard us talk about her and rant and rave about her, but she's our literacy coach here at the school. Okay, so thank you so much for coming out. I know it's such a cold night, but I really appreciate you guys coming here because one of our goals for this year is really partnering with parents. And the topic is demystifying the Common Core standards. So, just like we do in the classroom, we talk about objectives and what do we want you to know or be able to do by the end of the session. In the classroom, it would be a lesson. So, one of the things we want to do is to explore the Common Core standards. We want to talk about and discuss the rationale and the big shifts from the old standards to the new Common Core standards. And then, of course, we want to talk about how can you help? Okay, so we've got a really cool video clip. It's only 3 minutes long, and it does a really good job of giving a brief overview of the Common Core standards and the rationale as well. What would you like next? What would you like more of? Okay, so.
Like it or not, life is full of measuring sticks. How smart we are, how fast we are, how well we can, compete. But up until now, it's been pretty hard to tell how well kids are competing in school and how well they're going to do when they get out of school. We like to think that our education system does that. But when it comes to learning what they really need to be successful after graduation, is a girl in your neighborhood being taught as much as her friend over in the next one? Is a graduating senior in, say, St. Louis as prepared to get a job as the graduate in Shanghai? Well, it turns out the answer to both of these questions is no. Because for years, states have been setting different standards for what students should know and be able to do at each grade level. That's making it too hard to know if our kids are really doing well enough overall, and if they can really compete for a job someday. What we really need are clear goals. That's where the Common Core state standards come in. They're like a total sea change in education. Consistent, strong, clear benchmarks for English language arts and math. Here's how it works. You can think of kindergarten through 12th grade like a giant staircase. Each step is a skill your child needs to learn before stepping up to the next one. But right now, too many kids aren't really confident with like 2 plus 2 before they have to move on to 2 times 2. We need more focus on the skills that help them move up the stairs, or they can slip up and fall behind. And there's another problem. What if everyone's stairs were made at different heights? Well, here we go again. They are. So, a boy in Seattle who's rocking an A in English literature could be getting a C on his Chicago friend's staircase. Oops. We need to create consistent steps in education too. So first, each standard creates a landing on the staircase, a stop along the way as your child heads toward high school graduation. Each stop is a chance for every parent and teacher to focus on the skills their students are supposed to know at that step, no matter the zip code, language, or race. And more importantly, each standard makes sure all students are learning what they need to know to get to graduation and beyond. Because something like counting to 100 leads to understanding dollars and cents, which eventually leads to understanding how to manage a budget. Secondly, the standards are consistent from school to school, and they match up against international standards too. Now we know how we're doing compared to just about everyone. So even though local communities will still design their own curriculum, with the same rules, everybody can compete on the same kind of staircase. But standards aren't learning. That's why we need teachers, parents, and students to help make that happen. By working together to help kids meet these standards. The world's getting more and more competitive every day. But now, when our kids get to the top of their staircase, they can have way more options on where their life goes from there. Clear goals, confident, well-prepared students. That's the Common Core state standards.
Okay. So, if everyone, if you could just turn to a partner, turn and talk about the big ideas you got out of this video, okay? And then we'll share out in a minute.
Yeah, she's the really good place.
We have a very close friend that Brook is.
I'll mute that.
Okay. So we're definitely going to have opportunities to discuss a lot of things today, but I've got Vanna White over there who's going to be just jotting down some things that you share. So would anyone like to share some new ideas or something that they got from this video?
I like that the teachers can still create their own curriculum as long as so they can still put their individual touch, as long as they're teaching the actual standards.
Right, so the Common Core doesn't tell teachers how to teach, right? It's really, we have common goals. Anything else?
Catch up with the writing. So we were talking too, though, that one of the questions that we have is how the Common Core differentiates from teaching towards the MCAS, and how, how to measure, not measure, but we're talking about using the Common Core to measure the goals that the Common Core has established, but if the methodology needs to be variable based on a way a child learns, how to differentiate that in the classroom.
This is perfect timing, Val, with our common assessments as well. So our district, we're doing a lot of work right now with common assessments and interim assessments, so that in second grade, every maybe 6 to 8 weeks or so, we are taking a look at what we've taught from the beginning of the year until that testing period, and we're taking a look at the standards. We're looking at the priority standards, and then we're going to assess the students. And then what we have to do, the most important part, is to go back and analyze, and then we've got to take a look at, okay, what do we need to reteach? So, and somebody had a question, I think it was you over there, who had a question about, so is the Common Core what we're doing right now the same thing that's happening in Long Meadow? Or so here's how it differs from in the past. In the past, the standards in Massachusetts looked different than the standards in, say, Florida or, Georgia. So maybe the end of the year expectations for a second grader in Massachusetts were different than in another state. So remember the staircases they showed? They were different heights. And that's what the Common Core is doing. And I think we just looked it up. It's 45 states have adopted this. So regardless of if you move, right? When we talk about end of the year expectations, it's very consistent. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what the big shifts are. So there's going to be a little comparison between the old standards and this. So, okay. So what are the standards, the Common Core standards? So if we want to think about, I always ask this question, what is it that we want students to know or be able to do by the end of the year? So that's really what the grade level standards are. And there's a big, big, big focus on preparing students for success in college and career readiness. So, we want to think about our second grade standards. When we see the standards, just remember that those are expectations and there's goals and they're benchmarks for the end of the year, for the end of, say, third grade in math and in literacy. So we're going to take we'll take a look at those in a little while. Okay? So just really quickly to go over the rationale for the need for change is the changing nature of technology. So technology has really leveled the global playing field. You know, there's so much information, and I know we hear about this at our fingertips, but there really is. We can get so much more information. When you think about what we learned, you know, in a year way back when we were younger, this is information a lot of students can get within a week. So we need to really think about our students being critical learners and to be able to analyze and evaluate all of this information coming in. Another thing is the competition in the global market, and the Common Core state standards are actually internationally benchmarked. And, you know, you'll hear us talking about this a lot today. College and career readiness changes. So really what the Common Core state standards is saying is that we want to prepare students with the knowledge of what they need to know and be able to do to succeed in college and career by the time they graduate from high school. Okay, we're going to talk about big shifts in literacy, and then we're actually going to get into a little bit of literature, and we're going to actually, you know, tackle a few of or uncover a few of the standards. So, here really in literacy, and we decided just to focus on literacy because we just didn't want it so big and to talk about math. Possibly that might be another session that we could do in the future. But right now, let's really talk about literacy. So, there is a stronger focus on higher level comprehension skills with the new Common Core standards. So when we talk about higher level comprehension skills, we're talking about analysis. We're talking about students being able to justify and to make judgments. To compare and contrast. So it's not just at that recall level, but higher level thinking skills. You know, in the past, they used to have comprehension and phonics on the same level playing field. Not that phonics isn't important, but right now what we're saying is this high level comprehension skills is really at the top. Also, the Common Core standards place equal weight on reading and writing. If you look at the No Child Left Behind, there really was zero emphasis on writing. But if you look at the Common Core, there's equal emphasis. As a matter of fact, we're assessing comprehension through writing now. And I thought this was really, really important. Stress the importance of critical citizenship. And one of the things that's happening is, you know, we read things or we hear people make claims. So what we want to be able to do is we want our students to actually ask the question, who is making the claim? What is the person's evidence? And also, what other positions are being suggested? Also, emphasis of reading complex texts to be ready for the demands of college and career readiness. One of the things that there's been a lot of research, and what we're noticing is many high school students transitioning to college have to take remediation and remedial courses in reading or in writing, really. And one of the things that they're finding is that there's a gap between the text complexity of what students in high school are reading and the expectation in college. So this is really a big shift with the Common Core standards. As a matter of fact, that's standard number 10 with reading. And there's a stronger emphasis on reading nonfiction to build knowledge. Right now, we're taking a look at a 50-50, balance of fiction and nonfiction at elementary. But then there's a shift, more like 30%, 70% nonfiction, because what they're finding is, when kids, students go on to college, a lot of the reading is really with nonfiction. And we want to make sure our students are able to comprehend and read that. And then, reading, writing, and speaking grounded in evidence from text. And we're going to practice that today with some reading selections. But with writing, some of the things that we're asking our young children, K to 5, to do is to take a stance, but then to back it up with evidence. So we're going to talk a lot about providing evidence from the text. in the past, maybe what we would ask students is we would ask them questions, and it would be based on their prior knowledge. But really the big shift with the Common Core State Standards is we're asking them, you have to have read the text first. All right. Okay, so just really quickly, the big thing to know about the structure with the Common Core is that it's really about the way that it was constructed is backward planning. And I'm going to show you an example of that in a minute. So the question is, what is it that young people need to know and be able to do to be successful in college? And then those proficiencies were combed backwards. So I'll show you an example of that once I just explain this. So since we're talking about reading, there are 10 reading anchor standards, and K through 12. And standards 1 through 3 are key ideas and details, those standards. And standards 4 through 6 are craft and structure. And 7 through 9, integration of knowledge and ideas. And then it's all about text complexity is standard 10. So here's an example. Here's reading anchor standard 2 at the bottom. And determine central ideas or themes of a text and analyze their development. Summarize the key supporting details and ideas. So here's the expectation in 12th grade. We expect students to analyze how themes develop and interact with each other across text, because we know that complex texts usually have multiple themes. So we're asking them to analyze those themes and those maybe multiple themes and how they interact. So grade 8, now we're asking them to determine a central theme and show its development in the text. So you see grade 3, it's a central message, meaning a moral of the story. But then grade 1, if you notice, it really talks about a retell of a story, but to make sure that we're including details. And if they can't do that, if we're having trouble in first grade of really retelling stories in a way that includes details, because the details really help us understand the theme, doesn't it? But if we miss this here, it's really difficult to get to there. So do you see that vertical alignment with the standards? There's like a trajectory of skill development. Okay, so now all of you should have Charlotte's Web. It's chapter 1. It's double-sided, page 1 and 2. Does everyone have one? Okay, so if you can just take, what do you think you'll need? 5 minutes? So here's what the objective is. And we're gonna, usually when we, at the beginning of a lesson, we always communicate the objective to students, and here, at this grade level, we always use I can statements. So, I can read closely to determine what the text says explicitly and make logical inferences from it. So, you're going to read this. You can use highlighters. You can use pencils if you want to annotate any notes. Okay, so you're really, really looking closely at details and really what the text says. Okay? So I'm going to give you, let's say 3 to 5 minutes. I'll do a check in 3 to see if we need more time. We good here? Does anyone need more time? Okay, so Anchor Standard 1 is really about close reading. So it asks readers to read closely to determine what the text says explicitly and make logical inferences from it. So this is a textual analysis. It's not a personal response. It's really not about making connections to anything. It's really, what does it say in the text? So in a minute, I just want to give you a little bit more. You're going to turn to a partner and recount the story, citing specifically from the text. But work to add in details that seem important, reminding each other of important parts or words that seem important. So let's say that Holly and I are retelling the story, and I start to say that You know, it starts off with the father grabbing the axe because he's going to go kill, you know, the pig, and she might say, the pig's name is Wilbur, and then, you know, maybe then I would say that, so his daughter, the little girl, and she might say Fern, who is 8 years old. So add as much detail and work off of each other when you're retelling the story, and it's okay to go back to the text. Okay? So do not bypass details. Wait, just say to somebody, wait, you left out an important part, and add it in. So why don't we give each other, let's give you 3 to 5 minutes to do this, okay?
Asked her mother, queer, why, and Mrs. Everett told her the choice of
Adapt what you see watching the cartoon.
So what are some of the details, like the differences from the text? What's it telling us? So what is the text telling us in the beginning? Do we want to try to recount it? So this would be something not first grade students would do, but students would be asked to recall the text. So we should have a try to play out what to start recounting it.
Like you said, Vern's dad went out to kill her.
First, everybody was getting set up for breakfast, right?
She makes me sad. She said, what if I had found it? Which I thought was interesting.
I know, for such a young child to think that way. If I was born small, would you have gotten rid of me?
Right.
Is that when he has a smile on his face? Is that when?
He was almost about to cry.
Yeah, cry.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Certainly not like that. Yeah. Right, because she said, well, it's not his fault that he was born so small. So then she ran upstairs, sucking from the bottle.
But then the brother, because we call it, you call that miserable thing a pig. No, but then at the end, he's like, well, I want one too. Yeah. So the brother's
So it's great to walk around and listen to all of the conversation that was going on, and you guys are really getting into this. I love it. Yeah. So this really is about close reading. What does the text say explicitly? But don't forget, we can also make logical inferences from it. So if you think about some of the things that you read, does anyone remember what they had on the table for breakfast? Oh, that was interesting, wasn't it? Bacon. Okay, bacon, coffee, what else? Pitcher of cream. Yep, donuts. And by thinking about the words that, you know, the author chose, does it kind of give you a little bit of a picture? Do you think that this is a family in need that's starving, or you think that they're doing okay? You know, and kind of created like this sense of comfort, you know, by the words and by what was on that table. And then, did any of you find any words that were particularly important? Injustice. Unfair. Okay? And did any of you kind of help each other out? So if they started talking about something, I mean, we were at the back table and we noticed, we went back because we weren't sure the sequence of things. Did she go up we didn't think at first that the father had said you can have the pig before she ran upstairs because she was crying, but he in fact did say, okay, you know. Oh, and also, actually, let me hold off on the next thing for the next part. So, we're going to go to Anchor Standard 2, reading to determine central ideas and themes. So, this is where you're going to ask yourself, what is the story beginning to be about? But then, what you want to do is invite one another to give some examples as evidence from the text. And don't forget, you know, complex, like we talked about it, complex texts and books and stories have multiple themes. Okay? So, maybe what is this book starting to be about? So, I'm just going to give you 1 minute for this, okay? So, go ahead and you can talk about that. I'll share some ideas of what this story is beginning to be about, and I know it's only one chapter.
About a girl and her pig. About a girl and her pig.
About a girl and her pig. So let's think about maybe a big idea or a theme. Relationships.
Between the family members, but also between the farmers and the animals.
Right. So I would then, if you were in the classroom, I would say, well, give me some evidence from the text. So why do you think that it's about relationships?
Because the mom gives the daughter a donut as she's running out the door, but doesn't give one to the son. He has to grab it on his own.
Ah, okay. So that's an interesting perspective.
But also the interaction between the daughter and the father. The daughter almost brought the father to tears by her words. So how those two react. It was kind of a new relationship for them.
Right. And did you see there was a part where he had a little smile on his face, right? Is that maybe when he said, well, if I was the run... Did he smile then? What did we say about that? There was a point in the story where he kind of smiled, and it was after she had said something.
If I had smiled,
yeah, what did it say after that?
certainly not. A little girl is one thing, a little runty pig is another. He smiled after.
He smiled after.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other themes?
Well, I don't know if we went a little deeper. We were just thinking that it's also about trying to define that, responsibility for the little girl, you know, so the father's and natural consequences of, you know, trying to prove, but also we were also thinking that it's maybe to show that there's, you know, some type of justification that not just because you're weak that you need to be just, you know, put away with, or, you know.
So that's what Gina and I were just talking about, the sense of value, right? Yeah, absolutely. So by the way, this is, oftentimes, this is a read aloud for third grade. You know, when you think about it, there's some complex, you know, there's a lot of layers here. Also, some think that also struggle for justice, okay? That could be a theme here as well. And evidence from the text is when she actually goes back and says, this is the most terrible case of injustice I've ever heard of. Okay? All right. So, I think this is the last one from this chapter, and then we're going to move on to something else. So, this now is, I skipped and went to 4 because 3 actually talks about, you know, themes across the text, and we've only read 1 chapter, so we can't, and how it develops. So we're going to skip that one. But, you know, many of you that know the story, friendship could possibly be a theme as well, right? Because there's friendships that evolve. So this is reading to interpret the language used in the text, okay? So this is, we're thinking about the decisions that the author is making. So interpret words and phrases as they are used in a text, including determining technical, connotative, and figurative meaning, and analyze how specific word choice shape meaning or tone. We talked a little bit about the breakfast, right, and the words that he used. So look back in the article. Do some words seem more important or suggestive than others, or do some words seem surprising or symbolic? Okay, so just take a minute and see if you can find any words. Okay, so if we can just really quickly, this is the last slide with Charlotte's Web. Does anyone want to share any words that you thought were really important? Or did you see any symbolism or?
We were kind of thinking like, when it talked about the beginning, it talked about doing away with the pig and then killing the pig. It's kind of a theme throughout the whole story of life and death and having that understanding of, she didn't want to kill it, but then later on in the book, Charlotte helps over, she died. Sorry if I get this. But I always felt it was a sad story, but I guess that's a theme throughout the book.
Right, so that would go probably more with standard 3, where they talk about how the theme develops throughout the book, right? Absolutely. So this, right now, with just the chapter that we read, did anyone notice, there was a sentence that said, Mr. Arable washes his hand as he gives Fern the pig. Do you remember that? Do you see that in there? What do you think that symbolism?
Like it's hers. It's her
Yeah, like,
natural consequences.
Uh-huh.
Now it's yours. Let's see what happens.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if you heard what Renee said. Washing my hands from it, right? So now, here you go. It's all yours. Okay. Yep.
And he also says to her, you can feed it on the bottle like a baby and then see what trouble it is.
Yep.
So he was also trying to teach her a lesson.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I also thought the word bacon, it's just interesting. He chose bacon, What were you going to say?
I was going to say that I love the first sentence and how it ends with axe, because I think that it gives this ominous feel, something bad is going to happen. And I feel like every time that word axe comes up, it just makes you think oh no, where's this going? And
That's a great point. Just the way the author started that first sentence, it just pulled you in right away, didn't it? Yeah. Also, and maybe this isn't significant, but I thought, how about the author talked about how the light shines on the pig's ears. You can almost see it like this miraculous glow. So I just thought that was kind of neat as well. Okay, so really what we wanted to do was just to share with you some of the reading standards, but actually to get into the text. And like I said, this is a 3rd grade, a read aloud, that is very typical in a 3rd grade classroom. But this is really the direction that, we're trying to go with the students. But you notice there's scaffolding in the classroom as well, so we're helping them really dig deep and think deep. So, thank you so much for that. Now, I am going to turn this over to Eileen Driscoll. And you guys are in for a treat because you're going to get to listen to a read aloud. And here's the objective. I can discuss a text with other readers using text-based evidence. So Eileen's going to talk about maybe a little bit about what it might look like in the classroom for an interactive read aloud. And then we can talk after about, with you doing read alouds at home, what are some of the questions you can ask? Okay, to kind of push them to think deeper.
I don't know if I'll be loud. I don't think I can hold the mic. Or should I use the mic? Probably. Anyway, I have to say I've never done a read aloud for such old people. I usually in front of kindergartners through 5th grade tops, so this is a little unusual for me. This is not what we would expect you to do at home with your child, but this is what happens here every day at Meadow. Brook. Kids have interactive read aloud every day, and that interactive part is really important in read aloud. So they kind of interact with the text and the teacher. It takes a lot of work to get ready for an interactive read aloud, and it becomes more natural the longer teachers do this, but we don't just randomly pull text, but we try to make sure that there are links to what we are doing in reading and writing, that everything we're doing is standards-based. So I decided to do this interactive read aloud. It's called the Skull Alphabet Book, and I wanted to pull a nonfiction one because there is such a larger emphasis now on reading nonfiction to our kids, and kids really love nonfiction. This was written by Jerry Pallotta, and the illustrator is Ralph Mazziello. Ordinarily, illustrators and authors don't work closely together. Usually you're assigned an illustrator after your book is accepted. I'm thinking these two probably work together because they both have a fabulous sense of humor, as you'll see. So we start out, warning, this book contains the alphabet. If you are afraid of the alphabet, do not read any further. This is a science book, A. This is a science book about mammal skulls. A skull is the head of a skeleton. Leg bones, arm bones, rib bones, and back bones are not in this book. A is for, we are not telling you. As you read this book, you will have to use your skull. Actually, what's in your skull, your brain. Can you guess what animal this is? Think. Its skull is perfectly shaped for eating small, six-legged creatures. So, anybody know what this animal skull is? What are you thinking? Be detectives. This is one of the easier ones. And I have all the answers on the back. So. Anteater. B is for, we are still not telling you. Did you think we were kidding? Every skull tells a story. Be a detective. Look for clues in different parts of the skull. So I'm going to read you the parts of this. The zygomatic arch, eye sockets, cranium, teeth, lower jaw, upper jaw, nasal passage. Any ideas? I learned a lot getting ready for this. No one knows what the zygomatic arch is?
No.
Do you?
I'm looking.
It's the bone that connects the cheekbone to the temporal lobe, I found out.
We have a baboon guess over here.
Oh, you are correct. Baboon. Okay, C. This book is really rich in illustration. The illustrations are fabulous. They're very, very detailed. Some a little bit easier to figure out than others. And one of the things I want to talk to kids about is, what is the purpose? What do you think the author's reason for writing this book is?
To make them think.
Okay, to make them think. And also, we always kind of question with nonfiction credibility. Like, does the author have what it takes to write this book about skulls? Why is the author qualified to write this book? And also the structure of this book. Is there a topic that you are an expert in that you could use an ABC structure to write your own text? So we're always connecting the reading with the writing. Is anyone here an expert on anything that you could write an ABC book on? Curriculum doesn't do it. But we might have some other topics. Anybody think of anything? I actually have the ABC book of baseball, written by Herzog, I think his name is. There are loads of great ABC books.
He's written several. He was at the Arbors a couple weekends ago speaking, and he was just amazing. The kids were enthralled by him.
Yeah.
And he has like a book on ABC's getting ready to do one. I don't know
This
if it came out.
author?
Yeah, Jerry, on crabs and on it's really.
Does he have a good sense of humor?
He is hysterical.
Reading this
The
book,
kids
I
had
was
a blast.
laughing.
He had a visual, he had the projector, and he had them up on the screen, and he had like a shark chasing them, like just like moving the projector. Like he was a really good presenter for the kids.
What was his name again?
His name is Jerry Pallotta. This is the one that
He's from Maine, I guess.
really made me laugh. F. F is for, brains are mushy. Skulls protect brains. Skulls also protect the organs of four senses: hearing, smell, taste, and sight. A sly person can identify the skull. There are only 3 letters in its name. Fox. But I just thought, would anyone like to explain this? The fox in the hen house just got his foot on his head. I'm not going to, I won't read the whole, but as we get further along to U is pretty good too. U is for, it is unknown. The government denies the existence of these aliens. What planet are they from? It is unknown. What language do they speak? It is unknown. What material are their skulls made of? It is unknown. If someone asks you about this unidentified flying skull, say, I don't know anything. So he really uses a great sense of humor at the same time delivering really interesting information to kids. And then this is the here's the break from the alphabet book. It says, and now an alphabet break. Here are some non-mammal skulls: a crocodile, a fish, a tuatara, a salamander, 2 birds, and a turtle. And then on this page, all the answers are hidden. So he uses a lot of text features that kids could use in their own writing. And another thing he has done, which I can't quite figure out, I might email him. All the presidents' heads are hidden in this book. Yes, I'll try to find a few. They're really well hidden. Some of them are in the skulls. Some of them are along the borders of the book. And it names where all of them are. I mean, you could just spend absolutely hours in this book. But some of the things I just wanted to talk to you about is when you're reading aloud to your children. Obviously, you're not going to be sticky noting your books and preparing your read-alouds with kids. But if we think about the Common Core state standards, we want to get kids to dig more deeply into text. So we want to think about things like, how do characters change across a text? What is the author's big message here? What do they want you to take away from this? So we're really teaching kids about reading and writing. We're not teaching them books. I mean, granted, we want them to learn through reading, but the point of doing interactive reading is that it really provides the building blocks for what they need to become proficient readers and proficient writers. So, and Lisa, if you, Holly, want to add anything, or Val, to just types of things to get things, kids thinking about is even predicting, what do you think is going to happen next here? And always base it back to the text, because it is not about personal connect. And kids, obviously, kids K1 and 2 have so many personal connections to make, but always bringing them back to the text is really important, because that's really what they have to do.
Oftentimes, I think, you can always ask, how do you think the character is feeling? But then ask, yes, why? Why do you say that? What's your evidence? Or how, does that say so in the text, or show me? I walked into a kindergarten classroom and the teacher was doing a read aloud with the students. And she did ask the students, so how do you think the character's feeling? And, the child said that she's really angry. And then she says, well, how do you know that? And the little girl was looking at the picture, and she says, because she's standing with her hands on her hips and she's stomping her feet, and she has a frown on her face. That's what we want them to do. We want them to get back into the text. Take a look at the pictures. Maybe it's with the older kids, it's something that was said. And just like Eileen said as well, you could ask questions like, so this character at the beginning of the story, it seems a little bit different at the end. How did they change? Maybe at the beginning of the story they were really excited, and or maybe at the end of the story they started to build more confidence, and so those kinds of questions. So, go ahead.
Lisa, we had a question on what grade level you would use this with, and we started to sidebar, and I said, well, it would depend on your purpose. So, if you wanted to focus on the way that the author used labeling, and there's really some scientific labeling of the skulls, you could focus on that. If you want to focus on the use of language and the humor, you could focus on that. So you could really probably pull this up as high or as low as you wanted to, depending on the types of questioning and what you wanted to focus in on with the students there. And you might focus on different things at different times.
Yeah, and one thing that brings to mind too, Val, is that one of the great things about Read Aloud is that it really levels the playing field for readers. I mean, if you walk into a classroom during an interactive read aloud, you don't look at who's maybe a more proficient reader, a less proficient reader. They are all on, it's an even playing field, because when they are free from having to decode the text or read the text, they can do a lot of thinking beyond what what they can do when they're actually reading it themselves. So some of the texts that we can use are more.
What time of year is it? How old do you think the characters are? And you can also, when we talk about reading to your child, you can also read with your child. If your child is at an age where they're starting to become more comfortable reading chapter books, let's say, on their own, but you still want to support your child, you read a page, they read a page. You read a chapter tonight, they read the chapter the next night. That type of give and take builds a little bit of independence, but it also gives you time to talk to your child about what they're reading and to share that experience with your child. Encourage family storytelling. Storytelling is the beginning of writing. So if we can verbalize what we want to say, we can put it down on paper. So just telling stories at a family reunion, telling stories around the Sunday table about what happened that week, or about what they read in school, or their favorite show and tell, their favorite thing on vacation that they did and why. And then those can be topics for books that you make at home together, and that could be as simple as cutting pictures out of a magazine, putting them together on pages. When they're young, the child can dictate the text to you. They could type it on the computer. They can write it themselves. And as Eileen alluded to, we encourage the use of model text. So if your child loves the Jerry Pallotta books, encourage an ABC book. If your child likes nature, encourage them to write a book about rocks.
Slide, and I'm just showing you this. It's on the bottom of your takeaway, and this is the link to Common Core State Standards. So really, I think you should just go to that site and just play around with it. So when you open up that link, there's a home page here and then the standards, but let's just say, for example, you click on English Language Arts. There's an introduction, you can take a look at the anchor standards, and then when we talked about reading, there's literature and there's informational text. So we were taking a look at some of the literature, and then if you look here, let's say your child is in first grade, you can click right here, and then here are the standards, okay? And these are all first grade standards. The standards and the key ideas and details, 1 through 3, craft and structure. If you click on it, here is the actual standard. Ask and answer questions about key details in a text. Okay? You could do the same for math as well. And I guess my suggestion for you, there's also standards for writing, speaking, and listening. But go through and explore. Take a look at the math as well. Deirdre, did you have a question?
Yeah, someone also just informed us there's a Common Core app that you can download that's free for the smartphones.
Oh, good.
And it's called Common Core app.
Okay.
Well, Common Core 6 well, they were simple, but there's one I think the logo has almost a little atom of circles connected by lines.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Deirdre.
So that's also another, I know we're all connected to our phones.
Yeah.
And it's also available in app form, that's free.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is, as a parent, my kids are a little older now, they're 20 and 22, but as a parent, isn't it great just so that the more informed we are, we're able to help our children. So at least if I look at second grade, remember, they're the end of the year benchmarks and expectations, but at least you'll have an idea, what's expected of them for reading and for writing and for math. So play around with it. And one last thing that we would really love for you to do, because we do want your feedback. There is a participant feedback form. If you could just jot down what did you like best about the workshop, and you can't say the food. How could the workshop be improved? And then the last one, this is really important, and you don't put your name on it. What other topics would you like to learn more about? We were going to have a checklist, and we were going to recommend some things, have you check it off, and we thought, nope, let's just leave it open-ended, and we really want to hear from you.